guy says, "I'm standing here today because of a pigeon." And that started a 12-year friendship of, learning about what this pigeon did. And again, this pigeon, he was on submarine patrol. This guy was on submarine patrol with a Catalina aircraft, and they couldn't land back in England because of the fog and everything. And so they kept switching their where they were going to have to land. And finally, the plane was running out of gas, and they had to land. It landed safely in the ocean, but they couldn't. They were there for 18 hours before they were rescued, and they were able to send one of the birds out, which was a white vision, and with an SOS. But because of the fog and because of the rain and everything, they didn't get rescued for 18 hours, but they did get rescued. And as soon as the last guys stepped into the rescue plane, the plane sank to into the sea. So all of the guys were rescued, and this man was saying, "This bird saved my life." And that's what's so fascinating about so many of these stories.
There are also animals in high places. One of them was a sentry dog for the Roosevelt Churchill Summit. Was that the Yalta Conference, or was that something else?
No, that was the Casablanca Conference.
Okay.
And Casablanca Conference, and that was the war dog Chips. And that is America's most decorated war dog in any of the wars, because Chips was actually awarded the Silver Star. And but he was the very first dog. He landed in our very first, when America came into the war. The war dogs started in January of 42, and Chips just got out of training basically when he was shipped over and part of Operation Torch, which was the very first battle really that America entered into the war in the invasion of North Africa. And so he was there on November 8th when everybody landed and stuff. And he became basically a patrol dog, sentry dog for the guys there. And the wonderful thing about these dogs, Scott, is, they enabled the men to sleep, because they would be on, they would watch over them at night. And there's a great picture in the book, a couple of pictures in the book of these dogs standing guard while their master slept. And it just makes your heart just, you just love it. You absolutely just love it. But after the invasion in North Africa in January of 1943, there was a 10-day conference, the Casablanca Conference, from January 14th to the 24th, with President Roosevelt, Sir Winston Churchill, General de Gaulle was there, and I'm not sure who else was there. I'd have to check. But anyway, during this conference, it was decided that the only acceptable thing that they would accept from Germany and Japan was unconditional surrender. Nothing else would be accepted from them. And that was huge. That was absolutely huge. And so Chips was the sentry dog for this conference. And he met Roosevelt. He met Winston Churchill. I'm not sure if he met de Gaulle or not, but he and 3 other dogs were the sentry dogs there, which is really kind of cool. And so that was in January. But Chips's day of destiny really came on July 10th, 1943. And this was during the invasion of Sicily and Operation Husky. And this was a huge, huge undertaking. And Chips was part of General Patton's 7th Army. And this whole invasion was 150,000 troops, 3,000 ships. It was one of the largest combined operations of the war, and this dog was part of it. And so they landed on the beach of Licata. And when they hit the shore, they were being fired upon by a Italian pillbox that was off the beach, just up in the trees. And the guys hit the deck, and Chips broke free of his handler and charged the pillbox. And oblivious to all the barrage of, bombs and everything that was hitting the beach. And the guys were panicked because inside they hear, 2 shots go off, and they're thinking the worst. And suddenly Chips comes out of the pillbox with the handler. He had knocked the gun off of the, out of commission. He had gotten the gunner by the throat, and, the guy crawls out of the pillbox, and the 3 other guys that were gunners in there came out with their hands in the air. And so Chips saved the day of all these lives of men, that are hitting the beach, and took this gun out of commission. He was wounded twice. He got he was grazed in the back, and also I think he got powder burns on his nose from the gun. Later that night, he smelled 10 Italian soldiers trying to sneak into the camp. And because of his sense of smell, they were able to capture these men, and they were POWs. So that was his most heroic day. And it's just amazing what he did. And because of that, he was awarded the Silver Star, officially awarded the Silver Star, which is America's number 3 medal for a military medal for gallantry and during wartime. And he was actually cited in his papers for the Distinguished Service Cross, which is behind the Medal of Honor. That's the number 2 medal. And he was also nominated for a Purple Heart from the wounds that he received. Now, sadly, the medal was revoked because there was a national outcry from the chairman of the Military Order of the Purple Heart that these awards were not meant for dogs, and that it diminished the value and the honor upon men that if a dog got it, which is really kind of sad. So Chips was stripped of all of his medals, but he was awarded them just the same. So he served out the war and, guarded POWs and went around to a couple of places. And then in December of 45, after the war, he went through detraining and arrived back to Pleasantville, New York, with the Wren family there, and it was a hero's welcome. He had the press following him home and everything, and it was just a great day when the war dog came home. So he was really America's first and highest decorated war dog.
Hey everyone, Scott here. One more brief word from our sponsors. Well, I'd like to pull back and look at this from the meta level. You've talked about these different stories, these different animals who were directly responsible for saving many lives. And if it were a person, they would have gotten many medals and accommodations. Just looking at the role of animals in history, which typically aren't part of this story, like I didn't know about dog troopers or paradogs. What do you think we get out of studying history when we include animals in the story that we miss out on when we don't include them in the story?
Well, I think you miss a more of a human element and path, because we project so much onto animals for empathy and, support and everything. Everybody has something different they put on their dogs and stuff, but I think that it's very important for these animals because it just shows a whole other side of war. And to me, what is important is that by learning these animal stories, a lot of times, they served in different battles that aren't really the more popular ones. But even if they served in the Battle of Normandy or, in the D-Day invasion and stuff, the fact that they served, when we learn their stories, we learn about the humans that served with them. And a lot of times these stories are just not taught in school anymore. The history, there's so much history to learn that you kind of piecemeal it and, take bits and pieces. But in learning these stories, and it's important for children, I think, because children relate to a great animal story. And by telling the history of war through the eyes of an animal, the child, I think, can relate to it better. I think people can relate to it better and understand it a little better because it's just a whole different side of what was going on. And so they're really wonderful ambassadors, for all of those that served. And it's very, very important, but especially for children. And that's why I think it's, I try to keep my book very, easy to read and PG because I want younger people to read this and hopefully understand. And also I think with animals too, they give a lighter side to the horrors of war in a way, because, they can be, quite humorous in their efforts, like, with Peter, tracking down that parrot, or Beauty looking for a goldfish, or, you kind of get some of the lighter sides of the war. And so it's just, I just think it's really, really important. They just bring a whole different dimension to the story. I think it rounds it out a little bit more.
And one other thing too, with your efforts that mimic those of what you did with Reckless, of getting the statue commissioned, you are also doing a similar effort with some of these other animals from World War II. Is that correct?
Yeah, what I've always wanted to do was do a war animals monument. They have a beautiful war animals monument in London, England, honoring the animals in war. And back when I first started doing this for Reckless, I wanted to do this. But then as I started working with all of these stories and getting deeper and deeper involved in these stories, a monument can only honor a handful. And I wanted to do like a sculpture garden and make it really kind of cool. But that could only honor a couple of animals. And so I've decided to go big or go home. I've decided that I want to do an international war animals museum. And it would be a place and I'm hoping to do it in Washington, D.C. And we would have, of course, a sculpture garden associated with it off to the side where people can go and walk around these beautiful sculptures. And the artist that did the monument for Sergeant Reckless, Jocelyn Russell, she is the artist chosen to do different statues of many of these different war animals. And so the museum will be filled with their stories. I've gotten so many pictures that we're just going to fill the museum with different stories on all of these wonderful animals throughout time. So it'll be, some of the early animals that were used, including elephants. And there was, believe it or not, there was a Polish bear named Wotek that served in World War II. And he helped the men in his battalion, which is really quite funny. But there are all kinds of different animals. So we really want to honor these animals in a museum of their own. There's nothing like that anywhere in the world. And so that's where we are going to be focusing on now that we have that, now that the book is out and I start talking about these animals. We're also going to be doing a monument to a Afghan Iraq dog named Luca, who also received the Dicken Medal right before Sergeant Reckless did. And that monument will be at Camp Pendleton for starters. But then we will also have her story as part of our museum as well, with her statue there. So there's just some fun things that we want to do to honor these animals in a big and permanent way for all generations to come to really reflect and enjoy and learn these stories of these amazing heroes.
Well, this is an ongoing effort. So for people who want to track what you're up to, where is the best place to find you online?
Yeah, I have a website at waranimals.org. I'm building a bigger one there, but that's a temporary one. But we'll also have the museum is mentioned on there, as is the book and where you can get the book. The book will be available on in all bookstores all over the place, but you can get it at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. my website at waranimals.org, and also Sergeant Reckless will have the book on there. I'm trying to put the website up, so be patient as we build it. But